Joining me now is Sapna Chadha, who's the head of marketing of Google India as well as Google Southeast Asia. Sapna, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us at Digital Women Awards.
Thanks for having me, Shaili.
I'll get straight into our conversation on how women entrepreneurship is so drastically evolving in a post pandemic world. How do you think the entire pandemic has sort of played out when it comes to the road to gender equality? Because every time there is an impediment in the way the world functions, some of these pieces really take a backseat.
No, absolutely. I've always been an optimist, thinking about the progress that has been made during my lifetime and thinking about, previous ages. But I think despite decades of work towards achieving gender equality, the disparities between men and women across education, income, economic opportunities has been fragile. And we're seeing that despite making progress, we know that the pandemic is a huge reason why we've gone backwards to some extent. Women are pursuing careers more than ever before, but only 1 in 2 women are in the workforce, right? Still. And that's something for us to think about. The pandemic, COVID, has represented one of the greatest economic threats to women and girls. I think, you've probably felt it. I've felt it during this time. It's been harder than it's ever been. And we see that it's impacting young girls. 20 million girls might not return to school. The first year of the pandemic knocked millions of women out of work. It's widened the gender gap in employment that's always been there. And so now we have to get right back to it again. Almost 90% of the women who lost jobs in 2020 exited the labor force completely, compared with just 70% of men. And last year, UN Women and WNDP predicted that by 2021, for every 100 men aged 25 to 34 living in extreme poverty, there would be 118 women, right? So there's a gap across the board. And in India, it's worse to some extent. Female participation in the workforce continues to decline. And, I have always been wanting to see that number go up, and it's feeling harder than ever before that I can get back to that space of optimism. But the only way to get past that is to be optimistic. And so, although the full impact of the pandemic is not yet clear, the fear that I have is that within India and around the world, the gains that we've made are going to take a long time to get back. But that's why we need efforts like, the Digital Women Awards and putting a spotlight on this and a highlight on this. Sometimes, I get the question, are we talking about this too much? No, we're not talking about this too much because there's so much work yet to be done.
Oh, there's a great deal of work to be done. But there's something that you said stuck with me, which is that, the pandemic has taken away a great deal of opportunity from women. And again, when we speak to women entrepreneurs, one hears perhaps the numbers are just about catching up or maybe even slow, that they've used the pandemic to start something new, in a bid to not be stuck because of a job loss, or have family members or husbands and partners lose their jobs in this period.
Yes, no, and that's true. I think for the stories that you hear that talk about the downside, what we hear about women-led businesses seeing declines in sales and profits. But for every one of those stories, you actually see that women are also resilient, and they've been quick to shift their business models for greater relevance. We did a report with Bain not so long ago, and 54% of the women we interviewed had actually already changed their business model in response to the pandemic. And another 24% are on their way to do that. So that ability to adapt to the changing environment, that innovation, and the way that women have gone about this is impressive. Women entrepreneurs have successfully adapted by doing three things that we've seen. They've acquired new skills. They're not scared to admit that they need new skills, and so they've acquired those new skills. They've redesigned their processes, understanding the gaps. And then they've accelerated their adoption of technology, knowing that to tide the crisis, they'll have to change things. And I think that's, what something that really impresses me. I think as women, we are good about calling attention to the things that we aren't doing as well as we could, and we're honest with that. And therefore, we've seen a lot of examples of women across the country who are learning new skills, supporting the livelihoods of their families, making up for job loss that might have existed, within their household by selling things over digital. We have, and you're aware that we've started the Internet Saathi program to create a more equal internet several years back. And more recently, we had an Internet Saathi accelerator that we created with a set of women who have businesses and needed a bit of help. They put their hands up. And what we've seen are some fantastic stories. There's this one woman named Tara. She's from Jharkhand, and she runs a small grocery store, average monthly income of 1,500 rupees. But she always had this ambition of starting a small business. And she joined our accelerator for rural entrepreneurs. And she expressed her desire to start an imitation jewelry business. And she then went from learning on YouTube how to create this business, how to think about building jewelry, how to create the product. Then she went a little bit step further, talking to some mentors, talking to others, and she got the confidence to help then design small posters, putting things online, putting things offline. And she started to sell, and she sold 5 pieces of jewelry in the first month, small, but it got her confidence up again. And now she actually markets products online as well as offline. And if you think about this, this is something that big businesses are doing, finding the marriage between online and offline. But she's using her offline grocery shop to sell. She's also found ways to supplement that online. And with her new idea, she raised her family's total income by over 15%. And she is now called digitally savvy micropreneur. And so I'm telling you this one story, but there are so many stories of women who are resilient. And it comes from that hunger to do something different and to understand that they must do something different, which is fantastic.
Indeed. In fact, you mentioned the Bain survey. I remember the People's community responding to that survey in its early days. And one of the highlights of that conversation was the rise of the solopreneur, which is perhaps like the kind of the story of Tara in a rural setting. And there's several such stories of women, even in the urban setting, who are trying to move the needle little by little, and skilling up through a sisterhood that can be extremely powerful, and bring in that much needed support and encouragement. But let's also talk about something that you already mentioned in a small way, but perhaps at a bigger scale. How do you think women entrepreneurship is really the big answer for changing the economic status of women? Do we perhaps need bigger, louder, noisier efforts that sort of take everybody together? Like, let's say we've done initiatives around women's safety.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think women are disappointingly underincluded in all economic gains. And women account for just 17% of the GDP in India. They don't own assets, farmland. And so when I think about what will change this is that, and how do we change this gap, is that women-led businesses can be the important contribution to the economy. We've seen this in other parts of the world. It's actually, there's no better place to look than in the rest of the world. And when you look at other countries, SMEs are generating jobs. They're generating job growth and economic growth. And so the only way is for women to become participants in this and to fuel this. And entrepreneurship is that solution. That report that we did with Bain, it talks about how 15 million women-owned enterprises exist in India. That might sound like a lot, but that's fewer than 20%. And so what we know is that if women can participate more, India could add up to 770 billion,
Yeah.
which is more than 18% to its GDP in the next 5 years, simply by giving equal opportunities to women. And so women entrepreneurs have, whether small or large, you mentioned micropreneurs or solopreneurs, whichever way we look at it, is that women are bringing alive ideas for a new India. And in doing that, they can transform their lives, but not just transform their lives, they'll transform the nation's potential. We don't talk about this enough, right? That this is not about helping women help themselves or help their families. This is around a massive transformation of the economy, right? I think even as Google, the thing that we talk about is the possibility that of digital to help the economy. And in the same way, the possibility of women entrepreneurship will help the economy. This entrepreneurial energy is what can take India to the next level. But we need to focus on it and not have this be side projects. It's
Yeah.
core now to the work that we do, but I don't know if that's the case across the board. And it needs to be core. This can't be nice to have. This can't be CSR. This can't be, extracurricular. This has to be a focused effort of many to make that change. But it'll help the economy. It's not going to just help women.
No, absolutely. And, this needs to be a mainstream conversation, as you said, that the effort to help women scale up at whatever level, however small they may want to start, needs to come from all quarters. But do you think that's part of the problem, that in a country that's as large as India, the one and only thing we focus on is scale, scale, scale? In the process, forgetting the kind of importance, women, small businesses need, and they are indeed many times led by women itself, because often they don't see the collective piece, while we search for that mega scale piece in the overall economic expectation.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think you can get scale not of individual businesses, but scale of women participating.
Yeah.
And look, all I see is scale in anything that's done, right? Because the things change fast here. I've spent a lot of my career in the U.S., right? But the reason why I focus in India and I'm focused on India is because behavior change and things change quite quickly. And so it may be that we won't see huge businesses for some time. I mean, there's some great stories that are coming out in recent months, of some wonderful big businesses by women. But, India has the opportunity to get millions of rural women entrepreneurs to participate in a different way. And that's scale. It doesn't have to be size of business. It's let's get volume. And I think there's no better place, as long as we can think about changing mindset and changing the equation and changing perception, right? I think some of the barriers are easily changed. Well, they're not easily changed, but once you take those away, then it's easily a battle and a mountain that we can climb collectively.
That's true. And, you talked about barriers. So technology is possibly the central piece in helping women go from being job seekers and become job creators, and especially so in a post-pandemic world.
Oh, absolutely. I think, if I always see that technology as a enabler. It levels the playing field. If you think about access to information has been something that's been restricted, right? And that's actually our mission as Google, is dedicated to making information universally accessible. And what that means to make it inclusive and to take away some of the gaps that have existed previously, whether through education or resources or information flow. And technology in this day and age, and that's why I mentioned YouTube earlier, is it's democratizing, and the way that women can learn, or all everyone can learn, but that women can learn by having access to information at their fingertips is fundamentally game changing. And I can't tell you how many women that I meet that say this, right? That, they grew up and they didn't have access to information, and technology is now giving them that access. One story I remember, I had a conversation with a woman once, and she said, I can't sleep at night now because I can now ask any question I want. I can go online and I can seek out any information that I want. Before, I only had the information that the people around me would give me, and that's fundamentally empowering. And so that's why I think, like, some of the barriers that we have, if we can move those aside, some of the cultural elements, some of the perceptions, some of the beliefs that women can't do certain things, if we can put those on the side and we can just give technology to women and let them flourish, that's what I see. I see women who have supportive families, who are given access to technology, whose husbands like are cheering them on because they know that they can contribute to household income. They're the ones that flourish because they learn fast, they use technology in a smart way, and they inspire, those of us who have been in big businesses for a long time. I'm always inspired by what I see. And so that's where I think technology can play a big role of really democratizing access and information in a way that we've never seen before.
So true. That's right. In fact, I think you often talk about how technology democratizes opportunity for women in particular. Let's talk a little bit about your personal journey, Sapna. How have you evolved as a leader and invested by supporting other women in their own journeys? I guess
Yeah.
one through Digital Women Awards. I,
Yes. No, I think what you've done for the Digital Women Awards is tremendous because women need role models, right? And so Google's been supporting since your first year, and we will continue to do so because women need role models. And once women have role models, they actually are really good at getting confidence by looking at that, but replicating. So that's something that we definitely, across the world, since I entered the workforce, I've been caring about gender equity, but I think more so in the last 10 years as I've spent time getting really involved because of the extreme gaps that I've seen. And when I say extreme gaps, I mean just the internet itself. Only 1 in every 10 internet users 5 years ago was a woman. 6 years ago, I guess. And now we're at a place where it's much more equal. And when you see a gap like that, like that's what it riles me up, right? That how can something like that exist? So my personal journey is I usually see data points that really make me angry, and then I say I need to do something about it. And at Google, we created the Internet Saathi program, and I've been backing that. My team has done some great work, but the way that I've seen the ecosystem come together, right? I think whether it's state governments working with partners like you, working with schools and educators, et cetera. Everybody's leaning in. And when you do that, you can see transformational impact. And so building on the work, one of the more recent things is we are trying to now help 1 million rural women entrepreneurs. So the next stage is from just giving access. And now that's not done, but almost done. How can we move to now helping livelihoods? And so we're hoping to support 1 million women entrepreneurs in rural India. We're supporting 100,000 women agri workers with the NASCOM Foundation. We recently announced from India earlier this year that $25 million Women Impact Challenge as Google, where we asked different NGOs across the world to submit their ideas. And I'm really proud that India had 3 winners and almost $2.5 million that are going to 3 recipients in India. Because again, like the innovation that you see by NGOs, foundations, it's tremendous. And so my own personal journey on this has been a realization that this is not something a person can do anything about, or that I can within my organization make change. Fine, that's not good enough. Actually, we need to all work collectively together, and how can I use the place where I sit today to help others have an impact. And that's why, whether it's the Digital Women Awards, supporting NGOs, or pushing for product solutions on Google, because that's the other thing is we can make our products work better, work differently, to support women entrepreneurs. And so this has become a very much a passion point for me, because still feel the same responsibility that I felt 5 years ago when I saw such a big gap.
Yeah.
But it's I realize from some of the data points that I shared earlier that we're still not even close to done when it comes to leveling the playing field in terms of the economic outcomes of women.
Thanks for being such a champion, Sapna, because I think it takes a lot to notice that this is a massive gap, but I think it takes a lot more to stick with it and say, against odds such as the pandemic, so unexpected, every time we're pushed back a few steps, we're going to still make an effort to make a comeback and get back onto the road. And what I loved about our conversation is how much emphasis you put on collaborative behavior, because today, the way the world can do collective good is by joining hands and not reinventing every single wheel in this road to make our world far more equal. Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, Sapna.